position to go after this money, and instead of making educational videos, I would be sitting on a beach somewhere sipping drinks with little umbrellas. Instead, I'm going to drink some tea and give you the real deal on the realities of small business grants so that you can avoid scams and start your business right. Now, don't get me wrong, there are real grants out there for businesses, but most of these grants, they encourage entrepreneurial people to solve a specific problem. And because of that, the granting agencies tend to look to established businesses who already have a track record. Also, getting a grant is not as simple or as plentiful as some people make it out to be. I've witnessed people who spent a considerable amount of time researching and applying for grants that, in my opinion, would have been better spent on actually starting their business. And while you may not have the money to start the exact business that you want today, if you end up wasting what could be years to try and get free money that may never come, my recommendation is to take some of this time and start your business small so you don't lose the opportunity to start a business that could change your life. So, stick with me and we'll dig into the realities of small business grants. I'll also talk about how to spot the scams and tell you where to find legitimate opportunities. So, what is a small business grant anyway? Small business grants are funds for entrepreneurs that don't need to be repaid, and they don't require giving up any equity in your business either. They mainly come from a variety of federal, state, and local government programs, as well as from private sources like foundations and corporations. And while it may sound like easy money, grants, especially the grants from the state or federal government, these come with a lot of strings, expectations, and reporting requirements. And if the rules aren't specifically followed, the recipient risks having to pay back all that money that they were given. To tell you how much grant money is available, this is a really hard number to come up with, but I've done a bit of research on the money that is given to small businesses as grants. And if my numbers are somewhat close, the U.S. government in the last few years has offered about $185 billion each year to small businesses. And then foundations offer $75 billion, and then corporations at $20 billion each year. So the money is out there, but it's not simply sitting in a pot at the end of a rainbow waiting for somebody with any business idea to come by and pick it up. Now, how do you stay safe when searching for grants and avoid these scams? I'm going to give you 6 things that I recommend looking out for that typically indicate when a grant opportunity is really a scam. Number 1, having to pay for grant information. And while there's a lot of places that aggregate grant information, this information is available for free online. For instance, you can use grants.gov to look up any government grant. Number 2, the granting agency will do the work. All you have to do is pay a small fee. Number 3, the grant is guaranteed or you get your money back. And I know several people who didn't catch the very fine print in the paperwork that they signed and never got a grant or their money back. Number 4, you are randomly selected to receive a grant and usually have to provide a credit card to hold that fund. Then at number 5, the grant application requires personal information like your social security number, bank account information, etc. If you are awarded a grant, this information will typically be needed, but usually not at the time of application. And then last, for number 6, a letter or email announcing the grant that comes from the government, but the website address to submit the application isn't a .gov or mailing address doesn't go to a government agency. If you come across a grant and you aren't sure if it's legit or not, I would recommend reaching out to a local small business development center or SCORE office and ask them to take a look into it. It's not going to cost you a dime to get a second set of eyes on this grant and could keep you from making an expensive mistake. Now that I've gone over what a grant is and how to spot scams, I'm going to go over a few of the legit grant programs that are out there and also where you can look up grant opportunities yourself at no cost. To start off with, the largest provider of grants is the federal government. And while there is very rarely a government startup grant, the good news here is that the government has set up a central database to quickly search all the federal grants. So, over at grants.gov, you can search for all the grant opportunities the federal government has to offer. Plus, they have a lot of information on the website about grants and grant writing. The largest federal grant programs that get talked about a lot as a source of startup funding, but aren't really for most businesses unless you have a PhD behind your name, is the Federal Small Business Innovation Research Program, or SBIR, and the Small Business Technology Transfer Program, or STTR. These are designed to support businesses with scientific and technological innovations. A few of the federal agencies that participate include the Department of Agriculture, Department of Defense, and the National Science Foundation, and a few others. Given the requirements of these programs and the complexity of correctly submitting an application, these funds rarely go to a startup. Other federal programs that open up at various times throughout the year include America's Seed Fund, the SBA Growth Accelerator Fund, programs that come through the Economic Development Administration, which, by the way, typically these are going to flow through to the states, but occasionally the EDA does have their own grant programs. These programs are normally directed towards unique or innovative solutions rather than mainstream businesses. Next, there are state and local grants that can be a potential source of funding. At the state level, you normally see grants for enticing a large business from another state to move there, or for tourism projects that would draw people from out of state to stay overnight, but they rarely have grants for startups. These do occasionally happen, but I've only seen this a handful of times, and it was very targeted to who could get it. To research these grants, check with your state Department of Economic Development or similarly named agency, and they will have a list of grants that are available on their website. The application process for state grants are challenging to say the least, and sometimes the funding is going to come from multiple sources, which is going to make the application requirements even more frustrating. For a startup, though, you would most likely find a grant or business competition through a local community organization or university. While these don't happen often, these are likely your best source of finding free startup funds. So, to see what's available, check with your local economic development agency, Chamber of Commerce, or Small Business Development Center. You also have Open Grants, which is a free and really easy to use resource that has all of the federal and state grants that are available to small businesses. Next, we have private entities that offer grants. These are hard to keep track of since the funds offered by these organizations change frequently, but there are a few that have consistently provided businesses with funds for the past several years. These include the National Association for Self-Employed, or NACE, which unfortunately you do have to be a paid member to be eligible, FedEx, and the Dream Big Awards from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. There are also niche grants too from different organizations. If your business targets a specific industry or the business is owned by a person with a certain demographic, there could be grants tailored just for you. A few examples of these include grants for women-owned businesses like the Amber Grant, Ladies Who Launch, or Women's Business Center grants, which are the most common. There's the Fast Break for small businesses through Axion, or the Minority Business Center grants for minority-owned businesses. And then there's the Second Service Foundation Military Entrepreneur Challenge for veterans. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode. I hope I've helped demystify the world of small business grants a bit. Remember, applying for grants is a time-consuming and competitive process, and it's important not to put all of your eggs in the grant basket. You can always consider other funding options like getting deposits from customers, crowdfunding, bank loans, microloans, bootstrapping, or seeking investment from angel investors so you aren't wasting time and you can get your business off the ground as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, please let me know.